I'm Damon Appel with Ohio Election Forum, here tonight with Donna Pang and Eric Alberts, also from Ohio Election Forum. And a special guest star we have tonight running for Ohio State Representative District 15, Ryan McClain. And you've got a website and Facebook pages. I'm not sure if you're super familiar name. I think we saw a video where you were testifying on a certain bill recently. Eric.
Yeah, I believe it was House Bill 183. I think the number was, and basically what it was a bill which would prevent in education settings from elementary school to higher education, college level, it would prevent members of the opposite sex from sharing private spaces with each other, whether it be a locker room, a bathroom. I testified in support of it, and I was actually pretty proud to, I guess say, piss off State Representative Joe Miller, because quite frankly, he knew the truth. He knows that there's only two genders. He knows that it's wrong to put boys and girls in the same bathroom as each other, especially at a younger age. He's upset because I called him out for being perverted. The Democratic Party has a perverted view that we should be changing children. I'm against that. See, my entire platform is based on liberty. The idea that you should be that they should be left alone from the government as long as you're not doing something that hurts somebody or takes their stuff. I'm a big fan of the Ron Paul movement from 2012. The idea of liberty, the basis that the basis that you should be left alone as long as you're not hurting people or take their stuff, is rooted in consent. Children cannot consent.
Oh yeah. And I think in that video, by the way, that was great. And actually, what did happen? Were you able to say anything after that ended? Because I think the video I saw he said the ranking member, which for those who don't know, ranking member is the party that's not in power, their head person. But anyway, so he's there saying, well, we are not, how dare you call my fellow legislators perverts, it's like, well,
I believe he said his constituents.
Yeah.
I didn't really get to say much after that because the chair quickly came to my defense before I could say much of anything else. But I think I did my job by getting Joe Miller that mad on live TV.
In that, I think you also said you've run before. Is that true?
Yes, I ran for state representative in 2018 under a different party, actually. I ran as a libertarian and the only challenger to then candidate Bride Rose Sweeney at the time, who is now serving as a state representative in the State House now. And I got 30% of the vote as a third party, so I think I'm a legitimate threat to the establishment.
Well, so what does that the Ohio Election Forum, we say conservatives only, if you look at our banner image, so what do you consider yourself? Are you all the way conservative? Are you, libertarian sometimes has some, I don't know if it's middle of the road view, but I've met some great libertarians, and then I've met some that are kind of all over the map. What do you call yourself now?
I consider myself a constitutional conservative. Like I do love me some Rand Paul.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But no, I consider myself a constitutional conservative. And you mentioned that you've talked to some great libertarians. You've talked to some libertarians who are. I think it really depends on who you're talking to. There are some people in the libertarian school of thought who think that we should get the government out of the business of border security. They think it's an infringement on free markets. My view on that is that how can you call yourself a libertarian if you don't want to defend national sovereignty? National sovereignty is the basis of privacy rights and the basis of private property rights.
Well, it's the American government in particular is the bulwark, the defense for liberty itself. So if you're going to call yourself a libertarian, you better have the government of liberty installed, right?
It's the same thing with the whole abortion thing. I think the founding fathers knew what they were doing when they put life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness in that order. There's a reason why it starts with life, then it's liberty, then it's pursuit of happiness. You cannot enjoy the fruits of liberty or pursue happiness if you're dead. You have to be alive first.
That's such a, especially with the whole issue one thing. And if you were following our page during then, we tried very hard to help everyone stop that crazy amendment. But, that's the thing that always gets me Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit. And you know what? You can just stop, because it's like if you can't get past the first one, what's and that's what it comes down to. It's about abortion, right?
And that's what the Democrats do. They like to cherry pick sections of the founding documents that they think sounds good to them. I think a good example of this is the whole 14th Amendment thing, where they're trying to use that to derail Trump and get him off the ballot in multiple states. Like, well, wait a minute, you are forgetting the 6th Amendment, which grants Trump his rights to due process, the ability to actually be seen before court before anything happens. If the 6th Amendment is being denied, any sort of 14th Amendment argument is null and void.
It's funny you mention that, because I saw an article just today, and I forgot where it was, but it was some, left-leaning type of thing, and it was saying like, oh, Trump's in trouble, there's a good case against him, and all this type of stuff, and what it was saying is, it doesn't matter that he wasn't convicted of impeach. He was actually impeached by a majority. He was actually impeached, so that matters by a majority. And then who believed he did insurrection? And I'm like, well, no, because you're only
insurrection, as we all know. Well, I mean, multiple. His tweets said protest peacefully. There was a tweet before that where he said respect our Capitol Police too. So I don't know where the left is getting that from. I think, quite frankly, all of us are stumped, but we all know it's lies.
I was just going to say, when was the last unarmed insurrection that you ever heard of?
Well, even
about the fact that Capitol Police were shooting rubber bullets into otherwise peaceful protesters. I mean, we talk about peaceful protests all the time. That actually was a peaceful protest until the Capitol Police instigated it.
Well, but back to the point though about what Ryan, what you were saying. Very great point to have is due process. And what I didn't get to finish was really, and I think you're probably on the same page with it. I think we probably all are here, but you can't, if you're not actually convicted of insurrection, you
shouldn't be punished for it at all.
Exactly. And that's what this article was I was reading. It's like, oh, it doesn't matter that he wasn't.
And I'm really big on the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights does not allow guilty. It does not allow guilty until proven innocent. You're innocent until proven guilty. That's how it always has been. It's how it was designed to be.
It's a whole different standard than we used for Bill Clinton when he was impeached but not convicted, and suddenly the impeachment meant nothing because he wasn't convicted. Let it go, And then yet when the same thing happens to Trump, it doesn't matter that he was impeached and not convicted. He's still guilty. It's just such a different standard.
Well,
I was actually thinking of the January 6th committee, which quite frankly violates Article 1, Section 1 of the United States Constitution, which talks about separation of powers. The legislative branch is not meant to have executive power to punish people, nor does the legislative branch have the power to put people in jail. It's like,
true.
And we also need to talk about Fourth Amendment concerns. Why are they just able to, at random, go to the FISA court, bypass the Constitution, bypass the Supreme Court, and pull up thousands of Americans' phone records?
Exactly. Fourth Amendment.
Why is nobody talking about this? Why is nobody talking about privacy rights? Why is nobody talking about how individual and civil liberties are being violated with this?
Well, so, just so that we make sure these are great things, and I think people are going to love you.
And I know what you're trying to say. We should move on to the state legislative rank.
Yeah, the state, yes.
To Ohio. I do apologize for going on a tangent there.
Yeah, what do you think is the worst thing right now in Ohio? Now, we talked a little bit about, HB 68 and those type of bills that are trying to
And thank God HB 68 was overridden by the Senate today.
I didn't see that. I've been busy today. Yeah, that's awesome.
I saw that like 5 minutes before we signed on.
Yeah, I also saw that too. I don't know if you know who Stephanie Stock is. She posted it, and I follow her a lot. She's the president of Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom, which, by the way, I've been verified with an A rating by them twice. In fact, in 2022, I got an A+ rating.
Well, so you're so medical freedom means a lot for you. Is that something that you would be definitely voting for if you were elected? Yeah,
absolutely. I think we need to talk about I think we need to talk about how Ohio law still has the same provisions that allowed us to get locked down in 2020. They still exist in the Ohio Revised Code. We might as well have a soft lockdown. I'm the only candidate in the District 15 Republican primary that has talked about abolishing Section 3701.13, which is what allowed Governor DeWine and the unelected health director to lock you down indefinitely, put you on medical house arrest without any sort of due process, violating the entire Constitution. I'm the only candidate that talks about 3701. I think it's 352, which allowed Governor DeWine to send secret police to private establishments, violate the Fourth Amendment rights, and shut them down, spy on them.
I have seen Ryan on the podcast that Diana France Smith does with Angela Shirk, and he's been on there and talked about medical freedom and was very impressive there.
Speaking of them being able to do it again, we talked about this, I think, in the Gary Fox interview did a couple weeks back. But, you know, DeWine, I don't know if anything changed on that today, but he has that emergency order out there. He has an executive order right now that he signed at the beginning of January saying, oh, it's to protect the children, right, for the parts of the bill, parts of HB 68 that he liked, not the other, but it references to Ohio Department of Health. I forget whatever they're just like directives, right?
And that's just another example of government cherry picking, which I talked about earlier on a more federal level, back to the state level. That's just another example, again, of government cherry picking. If you're going to stand up for children and protect parental rights, you're going to completely stand up for children and protect parental rights. Otherwise, you're just putting on a facade to try to obtain something.
And it's kind of like the heartbeat bill. If I understand it correctly, the only reason that passed was because we had a veto-proof majority on that. It wasn't that. And then later, DeWine comes in when he's running for re-election and it's like, we passed the heartbeat bill. I thought, no, we passed the heartbeat bill.
You know, Ryan, what do you think? It's a little further out of your district. We didn't talk too much about that. Your District 15, which is south of Cleveland, and did you want to describe exactly what that covers?
District 15 is Middleburg Heights, Brook Park, Brooklyn, North Olmsted, parts of Olmsted Township, Lindale, and parts of Cleveland, just like the upper parts of Cleveland.
What do you think, though, of how DeWine did in East Palestine?
In East Palestine?
Yeah, Palestine, some people say. Yeah,
okay. Palestine.
Yeah.
If you're talking, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't think he did a very good job at that. I like that President Trump came and visited the whole situation.
Trump brought bottled water, while DeWine drank water, tap water symbolically to make it look like everything was fine.
Now, more similarly, in my district, I wanted to touch base on some natural disasters and actually how we need more funding for our first responders, more funding for law enforcement. Brooklyn I believe it was January of last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Hampton Inn in Brooklyn caught fire. The Brooklyn Fire Department did not have enough resources to put out the fire without getting help from neighboring fire departments. If the Brooklyn City Council doesn't step in and act, or if another city, and this happens in other cities too, if they don't step in and act, I think the state legislator needs to step in and act on that. We need more funding for local police, local fire departments, local first responders.
Well, and I think it goes to too, that there's a lot of, in the Cleveland area, there's a lot of Democratic control, right? That's why you've got a mess going on. And that's ultimately you're running against in the primary right now against a Republican, but ultimately a Democrat holds the actual seat right now. So whoever wins this is going to go against this Democrat, right? Or trying to unseat a Democrat.
Actually, because of the redistricting, I believe District 15 is now an open seat.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
A whole new seat was drawn into this.
Nice.
Like, there is no candidate that is an incumbent.
Huh.
Wow. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I was just the other day trying to generate some information about the various reps in their districts, and I was amazed at how many have changed, and mine has changed, and even some of their social media accounts still show the old district, which makes it really confusing to figure out where they're serving. So anyway, That's a fiasco. And did you know that there's a movement right now that was introduced by a Democrat, Bride Rose Sweeney, with the League of
I
Women?
ran against in 2018.
And I'm sorry?
I ran against her in 2018, as I mentioned before.
Oh, okay. Well, she, along with, I guess, the League of Women Voters, has started a petition to stop the gerrymandering of districts, basically let the people decide where the lines are going to be drawn instead of politicians or something like that. But it sounded kind of good in the sense that I think the gerrymanderings, if you look at these districts and how they're drawn, it's pretty crazy. It seems
Well,
like there's got to be a better common sense way to do it that isn't based on cherry picking who you want to be in that district.
but Donna, never trust a Democrat. but you know, here's
I understand what Donna's trying to say. The only issue is, like, the more we legislate this whole thing with the gerrymandering, the more we're just kicking the issue the more we're kicking the can further and further down the road. We're creating more and more roadblocks, which actually ends up hurting the voter in the long end. Democrats talk all the time about all the time about how gerrymandering legislation is gonna help the minority. If you keep delaying elections, you're actually hurting minorities more than you claim to help them. That's annoying. What it is, it's a Democratic Party playing a game of paint by numbers with the maps.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So are there other issues? So you mentioned, like local funding, right? For your district. What other issues are near and dear to you, statewide, or
Educational freedom. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in protecting the entire Bill of Rights 100% of the time. Onto educational freedom. I think we need a parental bill of rights. I think that we shouldn't have any secrets from mom and dad when it comes to what's going on in the schools.
Eric, you got some questions? You've been waiting.
Yeah. I guess, a couple of topics here. One is the Ryan, on your website, you say that you'll work to abolish the income tax. So I'm curious, if the income tax was abolished, what alternative forms of revenue or spending cuts are to account for that?
I would cut back on the Medicaid expansion. I would cut back on three-letter agencies such as the Ohio Investigative Unit, which is what Mike DeWine used to shut down private businesses. I think that if we cut back on government bureaucracy and we cut back on unnecessary social spending, we would be able to afford a cut on. I think we would be able to afford abolishing the income tax. Ohio did not have an income tax until 1972. We still had bridges, we still had roads, we still had schools. Everything was working fine. I think at the end of the day, capitalism works a lot more efficiently than socialism. Freedom works better than tyranny. And I'm running for state representative to defend individual liberty. I'm also running to defend property rights. And if you don't have the right to your money, you don't have property rights.
Very well said.
And my next couple questions here, they probably overlap. And getting back to that video that you posted on your YouTube page regarding proponent testimony for HB 183, there were some things that you said that were interesting. I wanted to get more details about it. First one was that you mentioned that, and this isn't in any way, like a gotcha or attack on you, just kind of like more, just get some explanation.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me and for anyone watching this. Is that you said that you prior supported the Ohio Fairness Act, which I think at the time was HB 160. I think is a different.
It was HB 160, and yes, I did support. And I'm not going to lie about my record. I also used to be pro-abortion in 2018 as well. My view on that changed. I did more further research on the issue as I grew older. I think there's a lot of people who are more liberal when they're younger, and as they age, they become more conservative. So yes, I'm not going to lie about my previous record. I will be honest and upfront with you and say, yes, I used to have these views. My views changed as I grew older, and here's why. In fact, one of the reasons why I'm now pro-life is because what my then girlfriend, after I graduated college, became pregnant, and I saw the 8-week ultrasound, and that looked like a human being to me. And I thought to myself, how can anybody want to kill this?
I think you make a really good point. when I was younger, I called myself a Democrat, and I had a lot different values than I do now, not necessarily about pro-life or abortion, but about other things, capitalisms, I'm trying to think what else, but I just had a very liberal view of things. And as I got older, I switched, because you live and you learn, you gain wisdom, and that's just sort of a process that I think happens to a lot of people. So in my mind, that's very understandable and forgivable.
I do want to answer the question that was asked to me, though, about House Bill 160. I didn't realize at the time everything that was happening. I thought I was just fighting for like civil rights for gay and lesbian couples. I didn't realize this also meant allowing members of the opposite sex at young age to start wrestling with each other and creating an inherent danger. I think that what's more important is protecting religious liberty and protecting parental rights. If parents don't have rights to their children, if they don't have the right to say what goes on with their children, then you don't have freedom, you don't have liberty.
So I have some more questions regarding that, the proponent testimony. So some things that you said that I found interesting, particularly your approach to proponent testimony of HB 183. Because you cited 5 stages of development, 5 psychosociological stages of development. I
was digging into my notes from my bachelor's degree in psychology. It's Erickson's stages of psychosocial development, and there's multiple stages for each stage of life, all the way from birth to close to death.
So that's one thing that I was getting at, is that so on your website, you said that you have a psychology degree, or at the time, at least at the time on the website, you said you were working towards your bachelor's. So you have a bachelor's now? Is that?
I have a bachelor's now. Yes,
bachelor's now?
I got my bachelor's in 2022.
Okay, so I just thought it was interesting because you were referencing a lot of psychology in that, but then it makes sense because of your psychology degree. And are there like other issues, items, pertaining to like legislation bills that you approach with from a psychology standpoint?
Actually, I would talk about medical freedom and how during 2020 the masking actually really impacted children's ability to interact with each other, which is very important to, again, psychosocial development. There was in 2020 and 2021, there was a rise in pediatric psychiatric hospitalizations, and I think I have a theory that it's very closely connected to the lockdowns and not being able to interact with their peers, not being able to go out. I mean, children need to play, is basically what, to summarize it. Mm-hmm. And if children are denied the ability to play, and I actually explained this on a news article I wrote on my website, it's going to negatively impact them in the future all the way into adulthood. And they're still developing, so like they're with their mind, they remember being so young what happened to them, and it just keeps festering and festering. They grow more and more angry. They have so much time to remember and think about it and get depressed about it, get angry about it. And they have the right to feel angry that their rights were taken away by the state, as anybody should feel angry about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's wrong that the state not only took away their rights, but also took away their happiness.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch base on education freedom. Basically, what's going on with education freedom is, like, when the left has taken your guns, they're going to come for your children next. They're already trying. Leftist-controlled school districts all across America are, not just Ohio, are implementing hateful ideologies such as critical race theory and incorrect gender ideologies onto your children. I want to debunk this for you one step at a time. Critical race theory essentially argues that because one is a minority, they are unable to succeed without assistance from the government. And that is equating race to a physical handicap. That is disgustingly racist. I've heard some people argue this is what some would call racist sympathy. Oh, let me help you. You can't do that without a white person because you're black. That's wrong and racist to compare being a minority to a handicap. You are not born at a disadvantage or an advantage due to race in America. White privilege is false and does not exist. Where are kids getting the idea of white privilege? I promise you it's not coming from their conservative parents. If the school tries telling my son, who is born of both Turkish and Japanese descent, that his fair skin gives him privilege, we have a problem. The schools are also trying to, as you know, attempting to change the genders of children kindergarten onward. They will make it seem normal and okay to change a child's whole identity, including how they look, how they dress, their entire name. And here's the kicker: boys and girls, two genders. They claim this is for the mental well-being of that child. Let me tell you something. I didn't break myself through emotional trauma to get a bachelor's of science in psychology, only to watch the mental health world recommend lying to yourself as a temporary fix for anxiety. If you suffer from any other form of identity crisis besides gender identity disorder, the proper treatment is psychotherapy and sometimes medication if connected to psychosis. But if you suffer from gender dysphoria, it seems the proper treatment is justifying the symptoms of the disorder. That's bullcrap. If you treat something you want to recover from, not justify it. I believe in individual liberty. I've said that a lot of times. I believe that we need to revive the Ron Paul movement in Ohio. I don't care what adults do with their own bodies and in their own homes. You don't get to shove your sexual lifestyle down the throats of others, and especially not onto children.
Yeah, very, very well said. Thank you.
Well, yeah, Donna, as he was doing that, I'm there like saying, I really want him to be to go through the primary because I want to see him go against the Democrats. I mean, I think it is. Ryan, you've got an interesting background because, right, you're a libertarian. You actually were on the other side in some issues, right? Because you had lesser understanding. You've evolved.
And I admit that. I'm not going to lie to you. I used to have different viewpoints that a lot of conservatives would not welcome. My viewpoints changed as I aged and I got more life experience. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to sit here and lie through my teeth just to get elected. I think that the best politicians are the ones who are honest.
I think that's really in some ways a positive because you can be said to have seen things from both sides. It's kind of like when people go on about how they're atheist and you don't understand me because I'm atheist. And I think, I went from being a Christian to being an atheist for about 7 years and back to being a Christian again. And so
I would love to talk about faith for a second, if that's okay.
Sure, go.
One of the things that made me from I've always been fiscally conservative, but one of the things that made me from more a social liberal to a social conservative, libertarian, whatever you want to call it, was my faith in God. In 2019, 2020, I was in a horribly abusive relationship. I found myself homeless. And then I realized something snapped with me. God is the one person who would never abandon me. And I felt that God told me to go home to my family, and I did. And because of God's grace and God's direction, I was able to find welcome and support again. And I was able to find freedom again. And I found the will to try. And I also realized that if it weren't for the policies of Donald Trump, if it weren't for the policies of Republicans, I would have never been saved like that. I would have never been saved by an amazing free market economy with all these education opportunities if it weren't for Donald Trump at the time.
Interesting. Well, and just as a side note, because Donna mentioned it, hey, I started as a Democrat. My family started as Democrats, right? And I think that's the general way that there's so much push right in the schools and everything. There's a lot of people that start out as Democrats, but then if you're
I think the indoctrination in the schools that you mentioned is just another form of cheating. It's another form of election interference. Let's train them young so that we can ensure they will vote Democrats and we can actually get. But here's the thing: Democrats are not even progressive. They are authoritarians, and they prove that time and time again. When I'm not a progressive, but when an actual honest progressive does try to get through, they're shut down. They're thrown away to the side because Democrats want complete power over your life. They don't want some freedom here, power there. They want complete power over your life, and they will masquerade it as something that looks pretty every single time.
And it's always about a narrative with them. I mean, it sounds so good sometimes, especially to young people, when they say, everybody should make a living wage, and everybody should, everything should be. I always used to say their mantra is fair, care, share. And it sounds so good, but then when you really examine it and where it goes, it's not good. Free market capitalism is the way to go.
Absolutely. I think that the more we free the market, the better. Actually, even in healthcare, for example, the United States did not have a truly free market healthcare system in healthcare. Since the 1920s, and when we did, people were able to afford to go to a doctor. Progressives argued, "Oh, this is too unregulated. We have to fix it." and then all of a sudden prices go up, people can't afford it anymore. Oh, we gotta fix this now. Here comes Social Security, here comes Medicare, here comes Medicaid. Oh my God, we have an even further problem. Look at the scarcity. People can't even afford to go to a doctor anymore without having to go through all these regulations. Here comes Obamacare, and it's much, much worse. What's the solution to progressives now? Of course, socialize the whole thing, which is only going to cause more of a problem. Insanity is defined as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I want Ohio to be a bastion of free market capitalism, including healthcare. That's why I talk about abolishing the Medicaid expansion in Ohio. I mean, I get there are people who really do need a social safety net. My brother's disabled. He does truly need help. Let's save it for people who actually need help and not someone who just wants to sit on their butt and do absolutely nothing for their whole life. It's like, if you are able-bodied, I'm going to be frank, get a job.
Exactly. And Ryan, what do you think about this? I've always thought that one of the flaws with the Medicaid system is that it's, I guess it's federally run or it's state run. I actually
Ohio Medicaid. There's something called the Ohio Medicaid expansion. It takes up, last I checked, it took up about 40% of our entire budget. If we cut back on that, even half, we can start talking about abolishing the state income tax.
Okay, and see, I always thought that would be better administered locally, because if it's administered within my neighborhood, people know if somebody's sponging off the system or whether they really do need help. But if it's administered in some huge area like a state, it's really hard to identify who's abusing the system and who is really worthy of it. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I do believe that anything really is done better more on a more local level, as opposed to a state one size fits all for anything. And that actually reminds me more of the education system and how they want to make it everything one size fits all education system. I remember when I went to school, there was a state test for the state test after the state test for a final state test. We weren't learning anything. What we need to do is we need to legalize school choice in Ohio. I would support something called the backpack bill. I supported it in 2022. I would support any legislation similar to that again, because ultimately, if the money followed the child and the school districts actually had to compete, maybe they would start doing better. Maybe they start listening to the parents for once, because they would actually have something to worry about. Imagine if our school districts actually had to fight for each student to keep revenue coming to their schools. Just maybe the school districts would listen to parents and not indoctrinate children. Actually, there are several studies on childhood education to back this up, but I do want to discuss some personal experience for a little bit. I was bullied horrendously in both middle school and high school. I wanted to tell a school district I was being hurt, but when I tried, I was met with, "Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. If we don't see the bullying, there's nothing we could do about it." I truly do wish I was the exception to this, but unfortunately, I hear about it on the campaign trail all the time. I know those parents are not lying when they try to protect their child from the abuse, only to receive truancy notice and threats of juvenile court in the mail. The only goal these compulsory education laws serve to achieve is to control your child's life, make your child a slave to the state. Our children should stay in school, and it is important that as role models for our children, we insist our children receive a proper education. And this is another reason to oppose COVID mandates, by the way. It's the job of the parents to ensure that our child receive not only a proper education, but also a good moral upbringing. The government playing the role of the nanny only results in less freedom for you as a parent and more institutionalized trauma for your child.
So I think maybe we'll wrap this up. Donna or Eric, did you have anything else to ask?
Oh, I was just going to say, maybe let people know his social media accounts. I just looked you up on Twitter and followed you, and I think that's it's McLean 4, the number 4 freedom at Twitter, or X rather now. Okay, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and then I'm sure you have a Facebook presence, which I don't think I've checked out yet, but I will. And let's see, what else? Oh, your website. What's your website?
McLean, the word for freedom, actually. That's www.mclean4freedom, wordforfreedom.com.
Okay. And I just wanted to say, I think you have a really impressive knowledge of the Constitution, and you're very well spoken. And I have to admit, too, that some of the not meaning to criticize anybody in particular, but we've interviewed other candidates, some of whom are much older and have been veterans or whatever, and they don't ever talk about the Constitution specifically, except I support the Constitution, but they can't talk about the Fourth Amendment or the Sixth Amendment or the 10th Amendment. They
Do they
can't
know what they support? Is the question.
exactly. I mean, it kind of bothers me, honestly, sometimes when we interview these people and they don't specifically reference the Bill of Rights or, various parts of everybody knows the First Amendment and Second Amendment, but some of the others, they'll go out there and tell you how much they support the Constitution when they don't know what it is. So I think it's really impressive that you were so well spoken about very specific parts of the Constitution. And if I were up there, you'd have my vote. But unfortunately, I'll just have to promote you any way I can.
I'm glad you answered with the income tax, I asked the income tax question because we had one of the people that we interviewed was Matt Mayer when he had a brief governor campaign for 2026, and his answer sounds like yours in that he wanted to also abolish the income tax, but he also tied it to Medicaid expansion and and some sort of like exponential projection of Medicaid expansion throughout a certain number of years. So I'm glad.
Expansion. Yeah, it's not just the Medicaid expansion. It's a bunch of unconstitutional alphabet agencies, is what I like to call them, but unconstitutional three-letter agencies. If we get rid of government bureaucracy, we get rid of all these free social programs. We bring an end to the welfare state. We can afford to abolish the state income tax and go back to the system where we still had bridges, we still had roads, we still had schools, we still had hospitals, and we didn't need a state income tax. We didn't need to take away almost half of your paycheck when all the taxes were done. If we're going to wrap up, I would like to just end with this. Our founding fathers never intended for Americans to actually trust their government. The entire point of the Constitution is to recognize government as a necessary evil, to be restrained and minimized as much as possible, to be there to protect your liberty, make sure that people don't hurt each other or take their stuff, and that's it. I'm fighting for liberty as much as possible. I'm fighting for a world as long as you don't hurt others, you are not punished by Uncle Sam. Heck, I believe in a world where gay and married couples should be able to protect their marijuana fields with fully automatic machine guns. I want the government to stay out of your life as long as you are not hurting others or taking their stuff. I'm going to end with this. Ronald Reagan once said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. I don't know about you. I don't want to follow the socialist herd and let that generation be mine. My name is Ryan McClain, and I'm running for state representative of District 15 to stand up for liberty, for the people, and for the America First and Ohio First agenda.
Amen. So it's been great talking with you tonight, Ryan. Best of luck to you. And like I said, I want to see you on the stage debating the Democrat. Because I think you have a background that's going to be able to hit them where it hurts. So Donna Payne, Eric Alberts, Dan Mappel, this has been Ohio Election Forum, Ryan McClain for State Representative, District 15. Vote for him in the primary. The primary on
March 19th, I think.
Oh, March.
Yes, March 19th.
March 19th, not too long from now, March 19th. God bless you all. Have a great night.